About 1.5 years ago, a search warrant went out looking for a missing person named John. He was about my age, if not, maybe a little bit older. I only knew of it for some time, but then I decided to contribute to the search. Me and a bunch of other guys did some searching and split up with a buddy system. I was paired with this guy named Ethan. We became friends after a couple minutes of walking and talking. We traded phone numbers as we got close to the end of the day one for the search of John. Went home from where we all parked at the end of the forest. We set flags where our stopping points were. Ethan and I texted overnight talking about all this important stuff. I had trouble falling asleep just from thinking of how creepy this could be. No one knew where John was, or what happened. I had no suspicion of foul play or anything, but I was still ever so curious and concerned. I then got a text from Ethan asking if we wanted to do some overnight search in the woods. I then told him, sure. If we find him, we get paid. He replies, sounds good. Meet me there at the gravel parking lot. I then packed myself a small bag of important stuff, including water, flashlight, bug repellent, and a hoodie. It was summer at the time, but sometimes it was chilly at night, especially in a higher-hilled forest. I met with him at the lot approximately 10 p.m. We discussed where we'd be going, and used my phone maps to track the location of our car's distance from wherever we would decide to turn around. We proceeded to walk. After 5 minutes goes by, we see our flags that we had set earlier in the day. We knew we had stopped searching from there, but we decided to keep going since our purpose was to find John. So we walked past the flags. We marked as stopping points and we kept on going. After 10 minutes goes by, we stumble across a tiny cabin. It looked to fit about a maximum of 4 people, maybe 5 or 6. Luckily it was just the 2 of us though. It gave us some good space. We checked out the cabin and there was no suspicion, no marks, or anything surrounding it when we walked in. It seemed eerily spotless. So it didn't seem to me as anything really happened. I would hope nothing had happened out here. There was a tiny compartment in the floor of the cabin with only 2 cots inside. Lucky it was just the 2 of us. We decided to set up the cots on each side of the walls. We were both really tired, so we decided to camp there in the cabin. But we never got a chance to sleep. As we were both in our cots, we were talking about our lives across the cabin from person to person. It was about midnight when our conversation went to a pause. We only paused due to a noise that we had heard from outside of the cabin. It made me seem suspicious, so I had decided to go out of my cot and peek out the tiny window that was above where I had placed my bag. Nothing was in sight, other than trees, leaves, and the ground. We were both a little bit creeped out. Don't get me wrong, it was, we're talking about a missing person out here, you never know what could be out here. Ethan and I had then proceeded to put our hoodies and boots on, and we grabbed our flashlights and walked outside and moved around the area. Far in the distance, Ethan had spotted 2 white eyes with his light. In a freaked out tone of voice, Ethan had said, "Sterling, what is that? I see something with white eyes." I had looked in his direction and saw the same entity that he had seen, meaning he's not crazy. He's telling the truth. My heart began to race. He took a few steps closer, but the entity with white eyes made absolutely no movement, not whatsoever. We took a second to get on my camera to record some footage and then we looked in the same direction from where it was standing from before. But it wasn't there now. It had immediately disappeared. We freaked out, and then we went back to the cabin. A minute after being inside, we hear banging on our door. First I lock it, but then we sit in our cots. After sitting in our cots in fear, we then decide that we grab along a flashlight that Ethan had packed, and we use it as a self-defense weapon in case anything happened. We begin to walk outside, and yet again, there was nothing there. We thought it had gone away, but it could have been hiding for all we know. We thought it had gone, but then we did decide to keep walking and forget the whole camping thing there. I don't care how tired we are, we want to be safe. We put the cots back under the cabin where we had found them, we packed our stuff, and went along going further out. After about 100 feet of walking away from the cabin, we come across buried leaves. We used a couple of sticks and branches to dig through the leaf pile, and we did find a few bones in there. We both stood there in shock. We aren't professionals and couldn't test them to see whose they were or what they could have been, but we definitely did not touch them. We wrote it down to ourselves and figured out the location of where they were. After all that, we had set a landmark, and then we turned around and walked back to the parking lot. It was quite a long distance from where we were to the parking lot. After about 50 feet from walking from the mark that we had left, we again began to hear noises. Sounds of footsteps, sticks breaking, and rocks falling. I couldn't be more creeped out at the time. Then a shriek noise began to scream, and it screamed at us, and it sounded like it was telling us to leave. So we began running like never tomorrow. If anything had dropped out of our bags, we would have just forgotten about it. As we were running, we looked back a few times with our lights, and we did see a seemingly tall figure, and it had those same exact wide-eye look that we had saw earlier, chasing us, and we began running faster and faster. We did run past the cabin that we were at earlier, and the flags that we had left in the previous evening. We finally get back to the gravel parking lot, and then after we are out there, we hear no movement inside from where we were standing. The distance from the trees to the lot, absolutely no noise. Ethan and I agreed to file a report of the few things that we had experienced. The next morning, we got notified about the suspicion made in that forest. It appeared that something had been there. There were a couple of punch marks on the door of the cabin. Ethan, I, and the search team all went to where we were on the previous night, and we told everybody what had happened.